Today we're going to show you step-by-step instructions on how to install a car stereo into a C5 Corvette. The first step before proceeding is to disconnect the car battery. When disconnecting a battery, we always disconnect the negative terminal first. After the negative terminal is disconnected, we are no longer grounded to chassis ground, meaning when we move over to our positive terminal, if we were to accidentally slip off the terminal and short to something metal under the hood, short at the chassis ground by accident, since the battery's ground is disconnected, it essentially will not hurt anything. A good example is right here. We have our metal wrench on our positive terminal. If we were to slip and possibly ground it out to like that metal bracket there, if that metal bracket was grounded under the hood and the battery's negative was still connected, we would have a direct short to ground, possibly damaging some electronics in the car, the battery, etc. Okay, now that we have the battery removed, let's move inside the vehicle. First thing we want to do is remove the center console cover by removing the 4 Phillips screws that attach to the hinge. Let's take those screws out and set them aside so we don't lose them. And then let's carefully remove the cover and set it aside. Our next step is to remove the 2 little plastic covers that will expose 2 10mm nuts towards the back of the console. Let's remove these nuts and set them aside. The next thing we're going to do is remove the active handling insert towards the front of the console, and then we're going to disconnect any wiring that's associated with it. Now that the small active handling panel has been removed, we find 2 more 10mm nuts securing the console. Let's unscrew these nuts and set them aside, and then with a small screwdriver push on the tab securing the cigarette lighter wiring, and let's carefully remove this wiring. The next 2 screws that need to be removed are hiding behind the little door directly below the HVAC controls. The next hard to find screw is well hidden behind the air temperature sensor cover. I like to pry this cover off with a screwdriver. As you can see, I covered the screwdriver in black tape not to scratch anything on the dashboard. You'll find a Torx screw that needs to be removed behind that cover. The shifter boot is easily removed by just grasping the edges and kind of working your way around, and you can kind of lift it out of the center console. Okay, we finally have all of our hardware removed, so what we want to do next is kind of lift up and pull the center console back towards the back of the car. Now that that's kind of removed, we can work our way forward and carefully remove the front part. This is a little more tricky. You have to kind of finagle it around the shifter. You have the windshield wiper arm, the steering wheel there, but just be careful. Try not to force it, work anything too hard. It is plastic, but if you just carefully work your way around, you should be able to slide that off and around the shifter. And now that we have that off, we can set it aside and finally have access to our stock stereo. We have a couple more fasteners to remove, and once they're out, we should be able to slide the stock unit out of the dashboard. This unit doesn't want to just pop right out. Looks like it needs a little attitude adjustment, so we're going to get a small flat blade screwdriver and pry it behind the little ears that are securing it, and just pry it out carefully, and then we can finally free the unit and get behind it to unplug all the associated wiring. Once you have access to the rear of your stereo, you'll see that there's a coaxial cable for the antenna and 2 Molex type plastic connectors that have to be removed.